Hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets&Quants. Welcome to our live videotape live stream on the MBA for What's Next. I have with me a terrific guest, Amy Hillman, the Dean of Arizona State University's WP Carey School of Business. Amy, welcome. Great to see you again.
Thank you. Great to see you, and great to have all of you joining us.
Absolutely. And we'll be taking your questions at the end of our session. We're going to leave 15, 20 minutes for that. So during any time of the live stream, if you have a question, just send it in and we'll get to them in the latter half of the event. So Amy, a lot of people are talking about the demise of the MBA. Applications are declining, have declined now, I think, for 5 consecutive years overall. Have even hit the best goals for 2 consecutive years. Some of the declines are kind of breathtaking, on the order of 20-30%. You see enrollments declining, and you see some schools shutting down their MBA programs. So how are you trying to keep the MBA relevant at the Carey School?
You know, it only stays relevant if we make it relevant.
That's really true.
And, you know, I think for us, what we tried to do in 2016 was to look at the entirety of the degree. And by doing a comprehensive overview, then now we can make incremental changes every year and keep it fresh, because, you know, it really does demand staying in very close partnership with our employers and the needs of students and what they're looking for out of an MBA today.
Right. In terms of the students, what do students tell you about the perceived value of the degree, and how has that changed over the years?
You know, I think historically we always used to think of the MBA as a corporate degree. So
Yes.
you'd go get a full-time MBA and you'd get a great job in corporate America, and now that has less relevance for today's students. They know that their first job won't be their only job, that they'll have lots and lots of different jobs. They're increasingly attracted to places that or sectors that the MBA was not designed for, nonprofit, governmental, etc. So I think that what we've been trying to do is listen to those students, build more curriculum, different approaches to internships and experiential learning that appeals to those students. As you know, I mean, there's so many full-time MBAs now that want to be entrepreneurs. Well, what kind of a meaningful internship do we give them if we follow the internships of the past, which we simply can't do anymore?
Yeah, that's really true. And when you changed the curriculum, how in fact did you change it to keep it up to date?
So a basic was we added analytics through the entire core, and that doesn't seem very revelatory because of the emphasis on big business these days. You're not going to be able to manage and make good decisions if you don't know how data works. But we also have done a couple of other things that we think play upon that MBA for what's next. And I like this idea of what's next because we know that our students are going to change their careers so many times, and it also tells us there's got to be a what's next. After almost every semester, what's next? And so we have to be moving at the rate of change in the business community. So I'll give you a couple of examples.
Great.
One is there's a lot of talk around interdisciplinarity. But in most business schools, that means you've got a finance person with a marketing person on a team, and they learn how to work together.
Right.
What we're doing is we're doing a fusion learning lab. And that includes not only our MBAs, but master's students from other colleges and schools at ASU that have to work together in teams to solve real-world problems. So we designed that, and what they're doing there is these professionals are coming together. They're having to teach each other their own language and skills, and then go out and serve a client in a way that is pretty seamless.
What other disciplines are coming in?
Oh, it's been really exciting. So for example, the city of Tempe, which is where ASU is located, came to us because they would like a carbon neutral footprint by 2025. So our MBA students worked with the School of Sustainability master's students on that project.
Wow.
We've also done other projects for the Department of Health and Human Services, where our supply chain students worked with public affairs students and social workers to really redesign the queuing that occurs to get services to those that are most in need. So it's been a really interesting experience for our students, and it is something that I think has put an interdisciplinary mark on our culture, and also giving back part of our culture as well.
And ultimately, in the real world, they're going to have to work with people who aren't MBAs.
Absolutely. And so learning that sooner rather than later, and also getting this perspective of what skills an MBA can bring to these big societal problems and challenges is really empowering for them. We also know that mentoring is going to be really important in the lives of our students. Always has been, but it'll be even more important as they navigate very different careers than most of us had. So we are very excited that we have a course called The Future of Work. And the future of work is a team of about 50 to 60 corporate executives, proven entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, et cetera, who volunteer to mentor our students over a 22-month journey. So they'll do leadership coaching to their personalized assessment plan. They'll talk about careers. They do lunch and learns on topics that are facing the future of work. And that part of our community has grown so strong that it's a real joy to see how the corporate community is embracing the young people. And our students are helping the older mentors also navigate the new world of work.
How do you hook them up with your students?
So we interview everyone who wants to participate. They actually go through the same assessments that our students do, and they understand the leadership development plans. And then we try to match based on expertise and interests of the students. But they will have a mentor that stays with them for the whole 22 months.
Now, how'd you get so many people to volunteer for this?
I think we're lucky. We live in Phoenix, Arizona, where a lot of semi-residents, you get board members who have a home in Phoenix, or a lot of retirees are there. And there's just a lot of the business community that wants to give back. It's surprising, actually, very few of them are ASU alums. But they do this because they want to stay engaged, and our students really benefit from it.
Yeah, that's a special and unique opportunity to be mentored by someone who has been in the ditches and knows the nitty-gritty of what you're going to expect in the real world.
And even that population, we've tried to adjust who are the mentors as the students change. So we have former military, because we have so many active duty and veterans in our class that have navigated a transition into the private sector. We have entrepreneurs. We have a former professional athlete who then made a transition into a career. So we've got a lot of different types of people that are serving as mentors. And even though you're assigned one of these mentors, you often go to the other mentors for advice and counsel in an ad hoc basis. Right. So it's been a great experience for us.
Have you put in experiential learning beyond the Fusion Learning Lab?
We have. We do a lot of experiential learning. I think it starts really at orientation. And we just got back from our full-time MBA camp called Camp Carey. That's about 2 hours north of Tempe, so it's up in the Cool Pines. And we do some training around life skills that we think are going to be important. So we focus a lot on mindfulness. We focus on team building and big ropes courses up there to get the entire incoming class working together as a team. The second year students really imprint upon the culture of the first years, because they're the camp facilitators and help us design activities and things that really create what we're trying to create. And we're trying to create a community of students that are there to help each other rise up, not compete with one another. Right. And that's been a very big part of what we've been trying to do since I've been dean. I really believe in this motto, business is personal, and that's what we're trying to live here with these kinds of experiences.
Now, Amy, you used an interesting word, a word that I believe in, mindfulness. What role does mindfulness have in playing an important part of developing leaders?
It's an interesting question, and this goes back to the role of our students. We have a student who joined us 3 years ago who was a big believer in mindfulness and setting intention and the focus that comes with practicing mindfulness. And she started doing meditation and mindfulness courses or times for her fellow students. Then we found researchers that were on our Executive Connections mentor team that had also believed in mindfulness, and faculty throughout the university. And now we've put together regular programming in that. You see a lot of training now for executives in mindfulness, and it is, I think it can be a little buzzwordy. It's really about how do you live in the moment with purpose and intention. How do you keep distractions away from you? And we start doing that in camp so that they can really start to live that practice. We also really push them outside of their comfort zone. So we have an amazing dance instructor who came last year and did a workshop where the students had to dance with one another. And
what kind of dancing?
It was modern dancing, and it was about listening and paying attention to your partner and trying to achieve goals. This year we did a wonderful exercise at camp that was about drumming. And all of the students got their own different forms of drums, and they were all assigned different percussion roles to make a beautiful sound if they all followed direction and worked together. But if they were distracted and kept drumming while everyone else had stopped, they kind of got the point. So
Amy, this all sounds very new wave.
Well, I think, if you asked our students, they would say these things have direct relevance to their lives. And we're looking at it more from a perspective of how do we give them academic skills, of course. How do we give them applied and experiential learning? Yes. But how do we also give them life skills that will help them succeed throughout this career where they always have to be thinking about what's next?
Right, exactly. And Amy, a few years ago, you made a very bold move in the scholarship front. And I know the intent there was to attract people who might not otherwise not be able to afford an MBA education, and to also give them career choices where maybe the income wasn't as great. There were no big signing bonuses or six-figure salaries to start. How did that all work out?
It's worked well.
Yeah.
I think our hope, I'm a scholar of diversity in organizations. That's one of the areas that I study. And just being in a discussion-based classroom, you learn very quickly that the diversity of the people in the room is what makes the learning experience so rich.
Right.
And so we knew that scholarshiping was happening for full-time MBA applicants, but we suspected that most people didn't know that. And that unless you had the intention to pursue an MBA, you weren't applying and then getting a scholarship. And so we felt like people were self-selecting out of the MBA by looking at the price tag and saying, I'll never be able to pay that back if I go into a lower paying, industry or nonprofit sector. So we started this, and it really did exceed our goals for diversity. We also learned a lot of things along the way. We learned that while our skills, and we had designed these fusion learning labs and things to show how they're applicable to all these different pursuits, where we didn't do as good of a job was in helping them get those careers that they wanted, because we were making a transition ourselves. So we really went to almost a one-on-one job training, trying to help people find the right internships and trying to help placement. And so it was a bit of a learning for us. And now I think it's really a big part of our DNA that we're not saying, okay, we need everyone to go to investment banking because, that might help our starting salaries or our rankings or whatever it is. I mean, we're here for them to do what they want with these skills in their career.
And I imagine that the mentoring program itself really helps a lot of the students with the career path and finding the first couple of jobs.
It does. We don't tell our mentors they're there to help the students get jobs. And we tell the students that, of course, as well. But what those mentors do is they can help with a little bit of the soul searching that some of them still have. Even those that want to be entrepreneurs can learn quite a lot from an internship in a big company and seeing how companies innovate. So I would agree with you. Those mentors have really helped with that. And I think from the experience that we've seen, those mentors stay in touch with their mentees long after graduation.
Right. I'm also imagining that the Learning Lab model helps someone land a job, in part because you have a concrete example of how you've helped an organization.
You do.
Yeah.
Much like any consulting project, you can say, this is how I worked with different people which is a big part of it, and this is what we achieved.
Right. Now, you recently got, this is actually back in January, another very big grant from the Carey Foundation. W.P. Carey gave the naming gift years ago.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, in 2003, Bill Carey gave us what was then the second largest gift to a business school in the U.S., and that was $50 million. And Bill had family that were tied to ASU, but did not attend ASU himself. He really viewed his philanthropy from a return on investment lens. And he knew that $50 million to a business school like ASU's could put it on the map.
Right.
And that's what he asked us to do. He didn't say, go spend X amount of money on this and another here. He said, go and try to advance this school as much as you rapidly can by making the decisions that you know best to make. And so we were saddened when he passed, but we were very pleased when this January we received another commitment of $25 million from his foundation. This one is a little bit more purposeful because they asked, what are the next steps to keep this trajectory going? So 10 million of that will be focused on faculty, and in particular getting in what we're calling distinguished chairs that represent that interdisciplinarity. So not just finance versus accounting and publishing across those, but say a supply chain person that does humanitarian logistics, or an economist who studies, education and labor and employment. So we're looking for very interdisciplinary faculty with that. And then 15 million will be gone into our career team. And, the search for careers has become so different now with the age of LinkedIn and fewer companies coming onto a campus to recruit, and more international students, more students, as I shared with you in our case, that are seeking atypical positions. That's going to allow us to do quite a lot of new innovation in the career side.
Well, so it must be harder to recruit interdisciplinary academics than it would be someone who's narrowly confined to accounting, finance, strategy, operations, marketing. And it probably costs more too, right?
I don't know that it's going to cost us more.
Yeah.
I think where we have the opportunity right now and where we've been successful is ASU itself has gotten quite a reputation for interdisciplinarity. And so I think that when you are by nature an interdisciplinary academician, you're kind of neither A or B. You're some mix between the two. And to come to a place where we say, oh, you're just like us. We want you. We're all a mix between A and B or Y and Z. And I think it's a different feel than going into a university that says, okay, we want a really hardcore finance person. And if you're doing even the slightest thing on the edge of that discipline, it's not going to resonate with us.
Right. And then 15 million in career services, that's a big chunk of change. You're going to be able to do a lot with that.
We hope that we can really try to innovate with technology as well. I mean, there are so many advances now that I think we will be able to learn from with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and just looking at jobs that are available and posted on social media versus the skills and how you're representing them as a candidate. And then, of course, the international market has changed with the reduction in visas and the number of companies willing to sponsor international students here in the US. And so we're also going to be able to really put a lot of investment into the further globalization of our career services.
So helping someone go elsewhere to find a job,
Absolutely.
which becomes a lot trickier for a lot of people.
Just more complicated, right?
Yeah, but obviously you're throwing staff at it. That makes a big difference because you're going to be out there hunting for those opportunities for your students. And is that for your career services function across all of your programs?
It is, yeah.
That's good because you have a large undergraduate program as well.
We do.
What's your enrollment in your undergrad program?
So our undergrad program just started last Thursday, and we welcomed over 16,000 undergraduates.
Wow, that's
studying
amazing.
business. It is.
Oh my God! I'm surprised you have any hair left on your head.
No, it's amazing. We've brought in the biggest freshman class into ASU has been business for the last 6 years running.
Wow.
So,
remarkable.
back to your beginning question about the demise of the MBA, business education is alive and strong. It's just in different parts of, and different platforms. The specialized masters for us have been very popular, and as have our working professional MBAs. But the undergraduate in particular has been something that I think people should take some solace in.
And the other thing about undergraduate business education has become so good. I mean, if you look a quarter century ago, it's nothing compared to what it is today.
Right.
I mean, the quality of it with the experiential learning, there's also coaching and mentoring in your undergraduate program. The career services function is the secret weapon of every business school. You major in philosophy, they don't have a career services office.
That's right.
So I think that's why a lot of parents kind of steer their children into business programs. And you mentioned the other programs that you have. So how wide is your portfolio of specialized masters?
Oh, it's wide, and we continue to innovate. And so just, in the last 3 years, we've turned what was an evening working professional program into our ProFlex program, which is you're able to take all of your courses on face-to-face, or you can take some online. So it's a true hybrid. We've put our masters in business analytics in an online format. We have new partnerships, so we are getting ready in about a week, actually next week, to launch a dual EMBA with Agade, which is one of the best business schools in Mexico, of the Tec de Monterrey. So we'll be taking on a partnership there. And then I'm really excited, we are finally starting one of the first stackable degrees. And so what we're doing is MIT's supply chain department, which is a top 3 department like our supply chain department, has had a certificate up on edX. And several thousands of people globally take this series of MOOCs. And what we're offering now is the ability to have assessment at the end of that and transfer into a degree completion that will be a master's in supply chain management from ASU, where we take the MIT credentials into our program, and we on edX will teach out the end and grant the master's in supply chain.
So is that a hybrid?
No, it's all 100% online.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. So, people look at the headlines, the MBA in crisis, but really there's a lot more to any business school than just an MBA, particularly the full-time on-campus program.
Certainly, it's definitely the case for us. And the specialized masters, you look at the popularity of them, particularly with international students, those that are STEM designated. Our masters in finance, information management, business analytics, and accounting are all STEM designated. So it allows students to have that extra time here in the US. And then we've got corporate partners. You've got these corporate partners that are clamoring for business degrees.
Yes.
And they're just clamoring for something a little bit different than what has been offered. And so a great example of that is we were one of the first 9 universities to partner with KPMG on a new Master's of Accountancy in Data and Analytics. And we're using their proprietary systems for analytics. So the world of auditing is changing quite a lot based on these systems and what machine learning can do.
Now, is that only for KPMG employees?
No, actually, KPMG sponsors a number of people to come into the program, but the majority of the class are people that are just looking for work in one of the big 4. So whether you actually learn on KPMG's system and go to KPMG, or you go to E&Y or Deloitte or PwC, it's just going to be a similar system, just a little bit different.
I mean, what makes it really unusual is a corporate partnership. Because, academia historically has been reluctant to partner with pretty much anybody other than other academic institutions on semester abroad programs and joint degree programs. So I know ASU has a real good reputation for being truly innovative. This is a good example of that, I think.
We do, and most people are familiar with our partnership with Starbucks.
Yes.
It started some years ago, but we have a program with Uber now where for Uber drivers at a certain level, Uber will fund 100% of the driver's tuition through ASU Online, or they can give it to one of their immediate family members.
Really?
Yes, and so we're very proud of that partnership, and we partner with Mayo to have a program for their MD students to take a gap year and come in and study either an MBA or a JD or other degrees at ASU. It's funny to me, business schools you would think would be very close with businesses, and it's not always the case, but
I know,
it's
that's
definitely
very
the
true.
case for us. I think last time we looked, we had over 300 unique companies that were sitting on advisory boards for us in some fashion at the school.
Wow. Now, do all these other programs, in your estimation, cannibalize the full-time MBA on some degree?
I don't think so.
No?
I think the working professional programs definitely, that you're dealing with a student who doesn't want to give up their job to go
Right.
back full time. So they might want to make a slight change in their career, but they're not complete career changers. I think the specialized master's is only going to help the MBA at some point, because you're getting very, very deep in one functional area. And I think the deeper you're trained in that functional area, the better you're going to do in it. And most of the time when you're really great at whatever functional area you're in, you get a chance to manage. And if you're a good manager, you can move up and up in the organization. And so I think personally that those specialized masters are going to come back in 5 to 10 years and want to get an MBA degree because they didn't get the leadership skills and all the soft skills that an MBA usually provides.
That's true, and that's one of the major changes that have occurred in the last 10 years. The emphasis on leadership development and coaching and mentoring that we spoke about before, the inclusion of much more experiential learning opportunities, that has made a really big difference to a really good MBA program.
It has.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about your MBA program, then we'll take some questions from the audience.
Sure.
So tell me what the size of it is right now, and what does it feel like? I know that's a weird word, but I like people to sort of vicariously experience, okay, if I'm there, what is it going to be like for me?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've put a lot of time and attention into, is creating a feel. So having had a lot of experiences at other MBA programs, one of the things that we've always been very committed to is a small feel. Mm-hmm. So you know everyone in your class, you know everyone in the class before you, the class that comes behind you, your faculty all know you intimately, your mentors know you, the staff know you, the dean knows you. So
nowhere to hide.
Nowhere to hide.
But plenty of support.
Yes, I was going to say, it's not quite the microscope of nowhere to hide, but it's definitely, we've tried to create more of a family, mm-hmm. because we want our students to really know that they're there for each other, to rise all of them up together. And we're not a highly competitive program. We don't want our students thinking that if I do better, you'll do worse. Or
right.
that I'm out there competing for a job, because this is going to be a network, whether it is within those classes or within our alumni population, that will serve them through their careers for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And we really purposefully want to create this atmosphere. And I think that's one of the reasons we go to camp, and the reasons that we talk so much about business is personal. And our terrific faculty director of the full-time MBA, John Wisniewski, has a program that he focuses on called net investors. So who are the net investors in the program? So they're not just consuming from the program, but they're giving back. And so every term, we have students that nominate, and he selects net investors for the program. So they might be people who set up tutoring for each other if they see classmates struggling, or they might start a service day. Mm-hmm. And then I have lunch with the net investors, and there's usually about 6 of them, and we talk about what more that they can do, and it's all contributing to that kind of giving back. So if you've never been to Arizona, Arizona is a wonderfully sunny place, and
Indeed.
I think the West describes ASU's W.P. Carey School well. It is a place that not a lot of people are from, so we're very welcoming of new people. We're a rugged terrain. You had to be a real risk taker to move to Arizona 100 years ago. And so we're still very entrepreneurial. ASU has been noted by other college and university presidents as the most innovative university in the U.S. for a number of years. And I think that's what we do. We try to embrace changes that will help improve, but we know not all changes will improve.
Right.
So if we think about that MBA for what's next, we're going to get some things wrong. And we're going to, take student feedback and corporate feedback, and we're going to move in a better direction the next time we do it. But we want the students to know when they come, this is a safe environment to make some mistakes. You'll get feedback, and you'll do better next time.
Plus, you give people a lot of options, right?
We do.
You have specializations and you have concentrations.
We do.
Now describe the difference between the two.
So it's just really it's a nomenclature for a deeper dive in a functional area versus an industry. And so you really can create your own custom path. So let's say that you want to have a specialization in marketing, but you also are very interested in high tech and sports business. And you can model all of those classes together so that when you graduate, you have a unique combination that other students didn't have. And they similarly can create a combination of courses that really reflects what they want to do.
How many of these combinations do you have?
We have, I think we have around 6 to 7 specializations and about the same in concentrations or industries. So if you think about healthcare, international business, sports business, as I mentioned, consulting. So we have a number of things that you could think of either as an industry in themselves or a specialized skill set.
And your core curriculum lasts how long? Is it the first full year or is it part of it?
It's part of the first year. So we know that students and employers want to have some of the specialization depth before the internship.
Right.
So we're structured in quarters, and so in quarter 4, there's only one required core course. And so they start in Q3 and Q4, really taking some of the specialization. And the core classes continue into the second year. That's where they do the applied fusion learning projects, working with the other masters. We have our strategic management course, and of course the future of work continues through the whole 2 years of the curriculum.
Right, and I imagine the fact that you can take electives in your first year allows you to show up at your internship with a fair bit of knowledge so that you can really impress.
Absolutely.
Which is what you want your students
That's what
to
we
do.
want.
You want to convert those internships into full-time job offers.
Yeah, and we want our students to feel confident
Yeah.
that they're not walking into the first time in a new company, in a new role, that they've got the skills that they need to survive and thrive.
Right. And even though applications have been down at most schools, one thing that's really interesting is that starting salaries and placement are at like record or near record levels. Is that true at your place as well?
Our starting salaries are, but our placement has not been quite as high because of that atypical student base.
Right.
So I'd say if we looked at the types of MBA students that other programs are bringing in, their placement is extraordinarily high. It's a great job market right now.
Yep.
But if you take someone who studied supply chain because they want to make a difference in human trafficking, then finding the organization that is going to be the right match for their skills is going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And good for them, right? Because it's all about a supply chain when it comes down to a basic human problem like that.
This is where that new 15 million is going to come in really handy.
I think so. I hope so.
What do you think are the challenges ahead? We know that at least the full-time MBA degree has had some difficulty. Will it recover in the recession?
Boy, you really hate to wish a recession upon the economy to have better enrollment in full-time MBA. I don't know. Having lived through the last recession, in the very beginning, as you well know, we were showing the same demographics we've shown in the past, counter-cyclicality, and we were getting a lot more applications in 2008 to 2010. And then once it became very clear that this was no normal recession, then the numbers started to really drop. I wonder if, given recent history, people will say, this is a good time for me to quit and go back to work because it'll just be a short-term recession, or whether this is imprinted upon the minds of young people so severely that they won't even come back if the economy starts to falter again. It's hard to predict.
Yeah.
What do you think?
What do I think? I think you should apply to business school immediately, because I think this is like one of the most advantageous times to apply because of the decline in apps. I think this next coming cycle, we'll see another decline, and I'd rather apply in that marketplace than wait for the recovery, the recession, which will then cause an increase. Whether it's as big an increase as before, who knows? Whether it's long lasting, who knows? But it will go up, and the competition will become stiffer. And incidentally, I think if you apply now and you start next fall, the recession occurs, there'll be a recovery when you're about to come out of a 2-year MBA program. You'll sit out the recession, you'll learn a lot, you'll improve your credentials, and you'll get in with less competition. I think it's a fantastic time, and as we know, the scholarship dollars out there for MBAs, and you spoke to this before, are very high. The sticker price scares a lot of people.
It does.
And the pricing is not transparent.
No.
You know, I sat down with a person who used to work at Walmart, and they just couldn't understand, Walmart, everyday low prices. You know exactly what you're going to pay for something when you walk in the store. It's not like this Macy's where everything is a coupon. And if you have the coupon, you get 20, 30, 40% off, but who knows? And actually that person from Walmart who is in an MBA program was kind of distressed at the fact that you just don't know how much it's really going to cost, and it would be so much easier if you did, which goes to your point earlier.
I agree, and I think that if we are to do something about economic opportunity in the country, we also want to make that more transparent so that people who see the full price and have a bit of a sticker shock have a more realistic view about what they're going to have to really outlay for a program. Because for undergraduates, you can predict Pell Grants, you can predict federal aid, you can predict number of other things in financial aid. But for the graduate market, there's no kind of transparency in the support that you would receive, even outside of the school scholarships.
Yeah, and I think one thing holding back applications, frankly, is undergraduate student debt. Years earlier, people didn't graduate with as much undergraduate debt.
Right.
So they're worried about piling more debt on top of that, although if you look at the ROI on the degree, I still think it's a no-brainer. It really is. And in terms of the value of the education itself, no one can argue that business is less complex, less complicated, more singular, easier to do. It's more difficult, it's more sophisticated, it's more global. There are more challenges for executives who really need the basics and the training that you get in a quality MBA program.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So to me, the value is increased, and the demand for that knowledge should have gone up, not down. For me, I think the one thing that I would add to what you said is to apply now because of competitive forces that, I know it's a business mindset that we focus on competition. We learn how to differentiate our organization from others to create a competitive advantage. But I think your question earlier about prospective students is an important one, and that's finding the program that's the right fit for you. And it may not be the one that your dad thinks you should go to or your boss thinks you should go to. And it really is about trying to understand, what does it feel like at that program? And if you can attend and you can sit in on classes at different programs, it's really an amazing experience to be able to compare and contrast. Unfortunately, too many applicants cannot afford to do that, either in terms of time or the expenses to come and really get a sense of that feel. So thanks for asking that. Yeah, I think that's really true. If you can go, you want to have lunch with some students, you want to sit in the classroom and be a fly on the wall, you want to soak up the culture, you want to walk the campus, and you want to ask yourself, do I want this to be my home for 2 years?
Right.
Because if you can say yes, then you know you fit. And sometimes I think people mistakenly think about fit as where I'm going to simply be most comfortable, when they should think about where I'm going to be comfortable, where I'm going to be stretched.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what the MBA is all about. It's not about just, doing something that you're comfortable with. It is about doing things that you're uncomfortable doing, because that's what's going to happen in the world of business. Things are going to change on you, and you're going to be put in situations that are beyond your comfort zone, and you just have to trust in your own decision making and ability to deal with uncertainty.
Now, you've been dean for, is it 7.5 years?
6.5.
6.5, but you also were number 2 for a number of years before
Yes.
becoming dean.
Yeah, my predecessor was a corporate, so I ran the academic side of the college before that. So I've been in the dean's office for quite some time.
So Amy, what's the most uncomfortable challenge that you've had to face in your 6.5 years as dean?
I think really it's the balance. It's the balance of trying to maintain a focus on who I am as an individual. I mean, I came in to this profession because I love to teach and I love to do research. And being a dean is really great from the variety of it. Fundraising is one of those things you have to acquire as a skill, or you're not going to enjoy your job as dean. But it's really been how do I make everything I want to have happen work.
Plus, you've had incredible growth in overall enrollments and things. I mean, when you became dean, what was the size of the undergraduate program, for example?
So just, we had our last AACSB visit in February, and 9 years earlier we were at 9,600 students.
Wow,
and this year we'll be at just under 18,000.
Big change. All right, so we have a bunch of questions.
Great.
Let's
Thank
see.
you.
And this is a good one, and actually I should have asked you a follow-up on the STEM designation that you have for your specialized masters. I wondered if you had any in your MBA program as well. But here's the question. How is the current political climate affecting your perspective of international students? Is there any plan of having a STEM MBA at WP Carey?
So we have discussed this quite a lot. We are not going to change our entire MBA to a STEM MBA, but we are in the process of getting a number of our specializations STEM designated. So business analytics, finance, information management, we're already on track for that designation, should be coming soon. But we're not going to go the path of the entire MBA, because we know that a number of the other areas that are important to this, particularly the emphasis on soft skills, et cetera, we can't really meet the criteria of a very highly quantitative throughout the entire program.
Sure, and that makes sense.
On international students, I think international students are an absolute must in the classroom for diversity. I think that emerging nations is really important. We should have students from emerging nations in our classrooms. It's very hard to get them there. And so back to the scholarshiping, we've had a great deal of success with bringing in African students, because it was very transparent that we were doing scholarships for all. And not having anyone from that entire continent in a classroom is a real problem. So I think it's an amazing opportunity if you're an international student to still come and study in the United States. The press is very focused on the challenges, but if you ask me day to day, being an international student studying on our campus, it's a tremendous environment. We have a real focus on inclusion. We don't have division within the college campus or even within the town, and our employers and just think they're super important for us.
Yeah, and I'll add to the question about political climate. If you go to any U.S. campus, you're going to be welcome.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
these are progressive, open-minded places that really want diverse opinions from different cultures, languages, societies to add to the learning environment.
Absolutely.
So you might read, the anti-immigration rhetoric in the newspapers, but the truth is you'd be welcome with open arms at almost any U.S. campus.
And I think too that the trade war is causing a problem. So
Yeah.
you've got China really taking a hard line that it could be unsafe to study in the United States. The data doesn't bear that out. that's rhetoric about our industry, just the way there is about other industries, the agricultural trade wars, et cetera.
Right.
So remember that, this is a time of some very incendiary comments on both sides of the U.S.-China trade war, and do your research.
Yeah, good advice. Here's another question. I see that ASU is very proud of being ranked #1 in innovation, and I would like to know how ASU infuses innovation in the full-time MBA program. And we talked a little bit about this, obviously. The Fusion Learning Lab is clearly a good example. The heavy dose of data analytics, the additional experiential learning opportunities, the fact that you have executive mentors from start to finish over 22 months, side by side with your students. Is there anything else?
Well, we're definitely focused on, so a lot of that innovation that you described comes from the outside in of what do we need to develop for our students, but our students also have amazing opportunities to innovate. So if you're entrepreneurial minded, we have a new venture challenge that puts our students in teams that are working to advance a new venture with seasoned venture capitalists and serial entrepreneurs, no faculty allowed.
So is this kind of like a Shark Tank
It is
thing?
like a Shark Tank. We'll call it a Spark Tank because of where we are at the Sun Devils. And it's maybe a dolphin tank. So you're not going to get eaten, but you're going to get nudged along in a better direction. And so,
no blood in the water.
No blood in the water. We have teams of students in the full-time MBA that are going out and working with physicists in their labs when they invent something to try to see if there's a market for it. So we've got students who are creating new clubs. We had last year the Wine Society was created by a group of students. So they're innovating and they're telling us what we need to do to innovate those courses. And with that, what's next? We're reading their feedback. We're soliciting their feedback in many ways to try to continue to ask ourselves what's next in this journey.
And as you pointed out before, you stand in close contact with the corporate community.
We do.
To ask them, what do you need? What do you want? And are we producing it?
We do.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question, and it's kind of like, instead of hard skills, let's say this is a soft skill question,
Okay.
right? How does an MBA from WP Carey help a student become a better professional and cope with future challenges that a business professional faces, especially in a recessionary environment? So someone is anticipating a recession here,
Okay.
Amy.
So it's an interesting question because our full-time MBAs, we talked about mentoring for them. Our full-time MBAs mentor our freshmen. And if you think about that, that's what that question is getting at. Like
Yes.
how do they actually help a future professional become more professional and develop agility around the uncertainty that's to come? I think first it's by being more comfortable with ambiguity yourself, with understanding that you don't know it all, with understanding that cooperation and collaboration is really the only path forward, and infusing that in the people around you. And I think that's a far better approach to the environment today than thinking, okay, I've got my degree, that's it. I've got my skills and I'm going to go out and I'm going to become the CEO in the next 5 years. So I think we put a lot into a growth mindset, a lot into humility, and being ready to admit that you don't have all the answers and seeking help.
Now here's an inevitable GMAT question.
Oh, a GMAT question.
How much do you think the GMAT holds in terms of value for international students who come from a quote-unquote unorganized business sector, which might be unheard of by many in the U.S. market? So it doesn't specify what that unorganized business sector is.
Interesting.
Maybe it's small business, perhaps. Don't know. But the connection to the GMAT might be, you're in a totally different world from that GMAT mold.
Yeah,
right?
I think that the GMAT is, like any indicator, an imperfect one. I think particularly the quant score on the GMAT is an indication of your ability to do well in the more number-driven courses.
Right.
And even if you are in an unorganized business environment, the skills of big data are coming.
Yes.
And we're all going to become somewhat tech industries, whether you consider yourself to be one right now. And so I actually think that you're going to benefit your country environment even more by getting an MBA, because you've got an insight into what's to come and you can accelerate that change. So I don't think it's a great indicator, but I think it's an indicator.
And there's a good number of people who think the test is more just than an entry exam.
Yeah.
It's like good preparation for an MBA program, because it allows you a certain level of comfort with the quant material in the curriculum.
Yeah, agree.
Okay, here's someone who says, I have talked to some alums and they say that ASU is really poised to project consulting as a preferred post-MBA career path. In this regard, I wanted to know what steps are being taken to achieve that goal. It seems to me like you do not want to create a business school that's only for consultants.
Right. So that's not what we want to do, but through the years we've had a great deal of interest from students who want to go into consulting. A number of our undergraduates go into consulting, so we are offering more consulting courses in the full-time MBA and creating more of a connection with our alums in the consulting arena that can come back and help with that. So we don't see ourselves as a one functionality, one industry school, but consulting is something that we are really taking on because we've had more and more full-time students seeking that as a profession.
And I would bet that a good number of your mentors are consultants or
Former
former
consultants. That's right.
That's just a reality. And I bet that if you have a consulting bound student, you're more likely to match them up with someone who is basically from the industry.
And yes, and I would also say that a number of our international students do very well in consulting careers back in their home regions.
Right. Okay, here's someone from Boston who's looking to return to Boston area post-MBA. Do you have many alumni on the East Coast, and what kind of level of support do you have there?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Classic struggle about where to get an MBA based on where you want to live. So we have alumni everywhere.
I'll tell you, Amy, if I lived in Boston, I would definitely want to spend a couple of summers in Phoenix.
Right. Well, and what I would say to that person is, come spend your 2 years in Arizona and then see if you still want to go back to the East Coast. But even if you do want to go back to the East Coast, we've got very strong alumni. So just from the business school alone in, I'd say Boston, Washington, D.C., and New York, we have probably 9,000 business school alums that are working within those areas. We have about 7,000 in Chicago, a great deal here in California. So we're much more national than you would expect. It's just not the case that when you are walking down the streets in Boston that the brownstones are showing the Sun Devil flag as much as they might be showing the BU or the BC or the Harvard or the MIT flags.
Exactly. Now here's someone who's coming from the media industry and looking to apply for an MBA soon. Can you tell me more about some of the interdisciplinary projects MBAs typically work on?
Sure. So that's a great question, because the one thing that I didn't mention was also dual degrees. And particularly for us, we have got a number of dual degrees. And we also work in collaboration with the Carey School of Journalism on a business journalism set of courses that we teach for them. So in the communications area in particular, one of the things that we've been doing in these courses is you can take a community project or an organizational project and really think about how does journalism influence kind of the messaging around what a company is doing. So you think about earned media, you think about the ways that companies are getting placement out there for their products and advancing them. All of that's changed now due to analytics and the rise of social media, where consumers can do immediate feedback. So we've done a lot of really interesting projects based on social media. So we will literally get a dump of Twitter data in, and our analytics students will mine it for sentiment around particular issues and topics. And so I think someone that comes from the media industry, and in particular journalism, would find some of these techniques really relevant, even if they chose to go back into journalism after this.
And I imagine they could even use the program to incubate a digital media company.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a great example.
Yeah, and become an entrepreneur, obviously. Now here's someone who asks for examples of mentor companies. Now really, you have mentor executives. Do you also have companies that are affiliated with the school in a strong way and support the school?
We do. So as I said earlier, I have a Dean's Advisory Board. Most of our departments and specialized areas have advisory boards, and those advisory board members all come from unique companies, and many companies have people that serve on multiple of those boards. We also have companies that come in and will do flash mentoring or interview.
Flash mentoring?
Flash mentoring.
Is that like speed dating?
Speed dating,
Okay.
That's right. So come in and tell me, what you're interested in, and you just need a quick piece of advice on it. Or they'll come in and they'll do mock interviewing, or they'll do informational interviews. So we have got so many strong corporate partners. It would be hard to say who our strongest are, but certainly we place a number of students in high tech. Intel's in our backyard. We've got a number of other companies in our backyard that are very strong with us. The big four are all devoted partners to us, many of the consulting firms. So I'm not giving a great answer, but go visit our website, because you've got a list of kind of where all of our students are getting placed. Right. And you can also look at all the advisory boards and see if there's someone from the companies and the industries that you're interested in.
Now, we have a question from a career switcher. This will be our last question. The person's coming from engineering.
Okay.
Would like to move into entrepreneurship. Can you tell me a little more about how ASU supports a career switcher?
Absolutely, and we get a great number of our full-time MBAs are engineers. And so we are used to the engineering background. Engineers are very, I think, well positioned to become entrepreneurs, because they know the discovery process. Right. And what we will do then is we'll marry that discovery process with the business rigor. So you'll know how to do market research, you'll know how to do cash flow planning, you'll know how to pitch in front of venture capitalists. And so we'll give you an opportunity to start a business while you're at WP Carey and be mentored by people who can help you make that a success. And you'll find a team, I think, of very like-minded students that attend our program that want to become entrepreneurs that are real career switchers. So I hope you'll consider joining us in the fall.
And that's really important to get that kind of mutual support from people around you, which is something you can't get, I'm going to say, if you try to do it on your own, without the basics in accounting, finance, marketing, strategy, operations. Without seed money, without competitions, without mentors, that you have to all get on your own, and it's so much harder.
Right. We matchmake, if you want to think about it that way.
Yes.
You'll find people in the program and outside of the program that could be your co-founders, because they represent the skills that need to advance the business. No one person can ever advance a successful entrepreneurial venture. It's always a team.
True. Amy, our time is up, but it's been an incredible pleasure.
Thank you.
Great to see you again.
Great to see you, and thank you all for seeing us.
Yes, and thank you for joining us, and especially for all the really good questions. I thought we had a really good range of very smart questions that were asked by the audience.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that.
Appreciate your questions, and anytime you have further questions, please feel free to reach out.
This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining Amy Hillman.
Thanks.